I want to talk about is I want to talk about how we might then turn the focus on dad in this kind of situations. What do we see here and what might we start to do in terms of containing dad's risk? We know that dad's perpetration of domestic violence often goes along with a range of other problems in parenting. We know that the risk to children in the context of domestic violence is higher than the risk to children without domestic violence. And we know that moms and dads, or really dads, often stay involved with their kids even following a separation as a result of domestic violence. So here, what do we notice about dad and what do we have to start with? Let's start with potentials and what we might notice that's good about dad in this situation. Some of the things you may have picked up on is that dad is expressing a desire to be a father and to see his kids, and that's been consistent with our experience of fathers. Fathers, even those who've been violent towards their partner and towards their children, often see fathering as one of the most important things they do and feel like they want to be a good role model to their kids. We also know that dad has a relationship with at least one other member of his family. He's staying with his uncle, so he has some support. And as far as we know, dad has complied with the orders to stay at the uncle's and that the visits are happening there rather than dad stopping by and dropping in at the house with mom. But we also know about a lot of risks. And when I think about risks in domestic violence cases, I think about a number of different dimensions of risk. The first dimension of risk is really, what do we know already about the history of domestic violence and the pattern of domestic violence? What do we know about those static and historic risk factors? Now, the police do a standard domestic violence risk assessment, and so do probation officers. And if you can get your hands on that risk assessment, that's your best source of information in terms of thinking about what we know about his likelihood to assault his partner in the future. However, in the absence of that information, there's also some other things that we can think about. We can think about how pervasive the violence has been. Has the violence been towards the partner? Has it been towards other members of the family as well? And has it been towards the members of the community? How frequent has the violence been and how long has it been going on? So is this the first violent incident, or is this one of multiple that has occurred over time? To what extent does this violence include coercive control? So to what extent does he have control of some or all of the partner's activities? Does he decide where she can go, who she can see? Does he have control of the finances of her activities? And how potent has past violence been? How severe have those assaults been? So at a very basic level, assaults that include confinement, strangulation or attempted strangulation, physical injury, any sort of risk of lethality, assaults that have occurred in front of the children, and assaults that have occurred during pregnancy are all assaults that we want to be more concerned about. So if we think of historic risk factors, we need to think about pattern, pervasiveness, and potency. But then we can think about current risk factors as well. And I think of risk factors in two kind of general categories. One of them are things that we can change kind of really in the short term, that we can see and change right now. So here I've listed sort of my kind of shorthand around thinking about these risk factors. So we have ones that are to do with spinning. We've got risk factors to do with sexism. We have risk factors that are to do with failing to comply with authority. We've got denial, minimization, and blaming. We have lack of attention to the children's experience, and we have isolation. If we look at the father that we're dealing with now, we can see a number of these risk factors. We can see spinning. He's ruminating and thinking about how can he get back together with his kid, with his partner, and get back home. And there's a sense that there's a blame as well. So there's a sense that he's blaming his partner for things. We also heard minimization because he wanted this to all be over with and didn't really express or seem to have an understanding of the impact that he'd caused. We also have lack of attention to the children's experience. One of the things that really stands out to me in this situation is that dad only has occasional visits with his kids. And at least according to what we know, he's using that time mostly to try to coerce mom into getting back with him, rather than seeing this as the precious time that he does have with his kids. The other category of risk factors that are worth thinking about are also changeable, but tend not to be changeable in the very short form. These are things that we might want to look at, and we might need to think about how do we manage them right now and look towards longer term change. For this, these are things like recent stress that may have to do with unemployment or perhaps uncertain immigration status. Things like mental health, so mental health disorders, depression, impulsivity, suicidality, substance use, and particularly increasing or escalating substance use, and also recent or soon-to-be changes in a relationship. So here as well, we have some risk factors. We have a father who expresses concerningly a sense of desperation and saying that his children are all that he has to live for. That should make us concerned. We also have some suggestion that he may be escalating his substance use, and certainly there's been a recent change in his relationship. So here are some of the risk factors that we need to think about, and once we start to see those risk factors, we then know that we have to do something about them.